Hard to believe we're already about a month into, I guess, fall competition, fall sports games. Commissioner Mike Racy joining me today. Sir, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you. Good to see you again, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're kind of doing this a little bit different this year. We're going every other week, but I think that gives us an opportunity to talk about more things, too, as they kind of unfold. And there's always a lot going on in the MIAA, but I want to start with a conversation that you and I may know a little bit more about, but I don't know if people really know why that the conference office is located in Kansas City. I mean, geographically, yeah, that probably works best, but why is the office in Kansas City?
Well, I think a big reason, Chris, is just what Kansas City means for our member institutions. Even though we don't have a conference school located in the Kansas City area, and I guess I should qualify that we don't have a Kansas City school yet. Obviously, you and I have talked about the desire by the MIAA presidents to continue to grow our conference.
Right.
But when you look at Kansas City, we have over 100,000 alumni from our 14 member institutions that call Kansas City home. And when you think about that, I think the statistics I saw recently, the greater Kansas City metro area has about 600,000 people that have some sort of an advanced degree. So, you're talking about like 1 out of every 6 individuals in the Kansas City area that have a college degree, are affiliated with an MIAA institution. So it makes all the sense with the things that our institutions do here in Kansas City with alumni events, alumni engagement, certainly things that we do around the basketball tournament at Municipal Auditorium, and then just the corporate and business support that's here in Kansas City. A lot of that being led by MIAA graduates. Kansas City is a good home. You mentioned the geographic, center. We've got schools in Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma. So, again, Kansas City makes sense of why we would be here. And then, obviously we've talked before about the great setup that the MIAA has. Our office here in Hy-Vee Arena, a historic venue near downtown Kansas City that's played host to so many great sporting events and other concerts and other events that to have our corporate office, to have our MIAA headquarters here in Hy-Vee Arena, it's just a great setup for the league.
You talked about the basketball tournament. I think that's kind of maybe a big part too. Is with the Big 12, it's Iowa State South when Iowa State is in the tournament and everything. But when you get teams like Northwest Missouri State and Washburn and the teams that bring a lot of people, it's easy for all of them to get to Kansas City. And is that why the tournament's always been, not always, but why it's been there for so long now, is why Municipal and the Power and Light District has been so kind to the MIAA too when it comes to Kansas City and having stuff right there?
No doubt. This will be our 20th year of hosting the basketball tournament at Municipal Auditorium. Our coaches love playing in that venue. Our student athletes have a great experience in a very historic basketball arena. But probably most important is that Kansas City really does serve as that destination for our alumni and fans to come to Kansas City, to make a week of it. There are a lot of basketball fans that follow a certain team, and even if their team is out, they stick around for Saturday and Sunday action at the MIAA tournament. Amber Feldman and I had lunch yesterday with the folks from Visit Kansas City, and we were talking about March Madness, and again this year, the MIAA will go first in March Madness, but that's followed by the NAIA championship. I'm sorry, it's followed by the Big 12 championship.
Yep.
And then the NAIA national championship. And then this year, again, Kansas City hosting an NCAA regional. So for our fans to be part of Kansas City in March, really, the basketball capital of America when it comes to the quality of play and the national tournaments and the spotlight on Kansas City. Kansas City's a great destination for our fans to come and celebrate men's and women's basketball.
We've got quite a bit to get to on today's show. This next conversation, I think, is one that's probably going to lead us back to more NCAA stuff eventually. The Constitutional Task Force that, if everybody's been following this for the last, year or so that we've been talking, everything kind of goes back to what's the NCAA going to look like? What's the MIAA Division II going to look like? Where's the Constitutional Task Force at this point?
So the group has had one meeting, and I think we talked when this group got established. It's being led by President John Mosley at Lincoln University and President Elizabeth Kennedy at Missouri Western. They're co-chairing this group. It's made up of athletic administrators, faculty rep. We have a student athlete that's on the group. It's 9 or 10 individuals that are serving, and they've had one meeting. They've got another meeting coming up. They have one more meeting planned before Thanksgiving, Chris, and we're really hopeful that this group will have a report that they can present to our presidents when they get together in January at the NCAA convention. This group's really looking at, how does the MIAA need to reposition its governance structure, its administrative bylaws, its constitution, now that the NCAA has changed and continues to change. What more will fall to the conference to really handle and deliver to our member institutions, and that's really where we focused our attention. How do we need to change the focus and the things that our presidents are looking at? How do we provide a greater voice for our student athletes? How do we need to restructure our athletic administrators group? So that group is more responsive to issues and able to make decisions, a little more quickly maybe than we've been able to do in the past. So all of that is moving forward as planned. A lot of good dialogue and debate. That group is even broken into smaller subcommittees, Chris, to have those folks roll up their sleeves and dive into things in a little more detail. But look for a final report from this group in January, and we'll be happy to revisit about what some of those changes look like and what they mean for the MIAA membership.
How challenging is this for the task force with this era of college athletics and the NCAA? Is there a lot of, September 21st, here's what we're looking at. November 21st, there could be an entire change with Division I and the NCAA too.
Yeah, it's challenging because things continue to change and evolve. The name, image, likeness issues, for example. Missouri just changed their state law, and that law, the changes to that law just went into effect the last couple of weeks, and so the task force has to be mindful, that we're trying to build this airplane while it's in the air, and probably won't land anytime soon. So, we're doing the best we can to really be more structure focused and more organizational focused than issue specific. And we talk about issues and we test issues. If the structure looked like this, if the representatives on this group look like this, if the filter of things that went to our presidents look like this, where would name, image, likeness fit in? How would we deal with another issue like we dealt with responding to COVID? So we have to test the structure and the organizational changes that we want to make with issues, but we have to have these discussions not necessarily looking at the way things are right now and the way certain issues are being handled, but try to build a system that will allow the MIAA to be responsive and flexible as these issues arise in the future.
Sticking with task force and everything, MIAA basketball task force. I'm not too familiar with that one. I'm going to let you obviously take the lead on that because that's out of my pay grade.
Well, you might recall we've had various conversations in the MIAA about whether or not the current way that we do our basketball schedule, Thursday night, Saturday night. Sometimes those Thursday nights turn into Wednesdays. Sometimes those Saturdays turn into Sundays. But we try to schedule Thursday, Saturday, as often as we can. And right now, that schedule is set up in a way where our women play first and our men play second. And that's a long evening of basketball on Thursday night and then Saturday afternoon for teams that are hosting, 2 games, crowds that sometimes show up for the end of the first game and the start of the second game. And we've just had conversations about, is there a better way to do this? So finally our presidents this past summer put together a basketball task force. It's being led by Lori Hopkins at Northwest Missouri State, who's on the National Women's Basketball Selection Committee, Championships Committee. And the group includes one of our presidents. It includes a couple of our basketball coaches, administrators. They are scheduled to meet here this week. Chris, will be their first meeting. They'll have a couple of meetings before their final report is due next spring. But we're talking about things like, is there a better way to do our schedule? Perhaps a women's game on Thursday night, men and women on Saturday, and a men's game on Sunday. Or perhaps half of the season we play the women's games first, and then the second half of the season the men's games are first. There are a couple of other ideas that have been thrown out in front of this task force, but really the focus of the group is looking at the way we schedule the MIAA regular season and if there's a better way to do it that works better for our staffs on campus and provides a better experience for our fans. I
haven't looked into this from other conferences or anything at all, but are most of the Division II conferences kind of in the same way of setting things up too, as well as you go the doubleheader, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday?
I think that's the norm in Division II, and it's really, it's driven by travel and making sure that you're going to be looking at a long bus ride on some of these trips. So how do you send a team out for a game and maybe keep them out for a second game, but do that in a way that's that's cost friendly and but also mindful. I think a couple of conferences, Chris, play their schedule Friday, Saturday, back-to-back games, and that may help a little bit with travel and finances, but that's a lot to ask of your student athletes to play play on a Friday and then turn around and play again on a Saturday. We do some of that in our basketball tournament, but we kind of ramp up to that with our regular season games. But yes, I think that's the norm to do the double headers and to have them at least one of them on the weekend and try and schedule it that way.
Kind of keeping our conversation going because we had a lot this week. This is what happens when we take a week off in between. A lot of things pop up on us. Cross country championship announcement. Just kind of a cool opportunity for the conference and kind of another, I guess, just feathering the cap for the MIAA too.
Yeah, we ran into a little bit of a scheduling issue, and I guess the good news is that next year It looks like our student athletes will be running on the new cross-country course in Columbia, Missouri, that's really been built to host the Southeastern Conference cross-country championships. And it looks like Lincoln University, serving as the host, will be able to have our student athletes have that experience next fall. It left us a little bit in a bind trying to figure out what we wanted to do this fall. And, fortunately, Missouri Southern, that's hosted a number of big NCAA type cross-country meets. They've stepped up, and we'll be announcing this afternoon, Chris, that our cross-country championship will be hosted by Missouri Southern State University. The good news for our cross-country teams and student athletes is the 2 weeks after our conference championship, Missouri Southern will be hosting the NCAA Central Regional Championship. So it's always great, whether it's cross-country or track or golf, that you give your student athletes a chance to compete on the course or in the facility that they'll be competing for an NCAA regional title, and we'll have that this year. So we're fortunate that we've been able to work with Missouri Southern, and they've agreed to step up and do that this year, and it'll be another great championship for our student athletes.
Between that and, like you said, over in Columbia, hopefully next year too, just how big is that part of it too? Obviously this year, Missouri Southern, it's kind of the preview for the Central region, but next year, being able to run on a SEC championship caliber cross-country course too, just what does that give the student athletes and the coaches as well?
That's what we try to do with all of our championships. And you and I have talked before, just an experience like we have with the Edmond Center Court, the tennis center, and the new tennis center in Edmond, Oklahoma, voted one of the best collegiate tennis facilities in America. The ability for our student athletes, men and women, to play a conference championship there. We've talked about Municipal Auditorium and what that means to college basketball. And that's what we want. We want our student athletes to have a championship experience in some of the best facilities and venues in the country that happen to be right here in the Midwest. We'll be doing that in volleyball this year at the Civic Center, Civic Arena in St. Joe. So I couldn't agree more. It'll be awesome next year to give our cross-country student athletes that opportunity.
And before we get out of here, sir, we'll touch on the a very important milestone in college athletics, women athletics, the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and the Women's Leaders Convention in Kansas City coming up next month. Just obviously very big, very important milestone, 50 years since Title IX came into effect.
Yeah, very, very important law that was signed in the early 70s, Chris, and a lot of work to be done on that front, but certainly 50 years gives you an opportunity to pause and celebrate not only the accomplishments that have occurred in intercollegiate athletics and providing more and more women the opportunity to be successful, but to really celebrate those women that were pioneers that really helped make these changes on our campuses and in our conferences and led the way. And, that's what we plan to do this year in the MIAA. And a lot of that will occur at our basketball championship in March, where we'll take time to celebrate not just what Title IX means for the MIAA, but those special individuals on all of our campuses. And then, you mentioned it, to have women leaders, an organization that's headquartered here in Kansas City, and to be doing their annual convention October 9 through 11 here in Kansas City during a year when we're celebrating Title IX. It'll be great for women leaders. It'll be great for all of the hundreds of probably thousands of delegates that are coming to Kansas City for that convention. And it'll be great for Kansas City to have all of those individuals in Kansas City celebrating Title IX.
One more question, and I'll get you out of here. You talked about, and I think it's evident to everybody that we've done a lot in the last 50 years for women sports, but always more work to be done. Where do you feel like the MIAA has kind of grown or helped throughout this process too? Of it's only been 50 years, right? So I mean, it hasn't been like we've done this forever. This is something that's still relatively new to a lot of people, even though it shouldn't have been all that relatively new at all.
Yeah, well, I think when you think about the MIAA, and we talked before about how deep and wide our conference is in championship caliber programs, and probably the thing I'm most proud of is that when you look at MIAA national championships, more than half of our 50 plus championships have been in women's athletics. And when you talk about recent championships by the Central Missouri women's soccer team, the Central Missouri women's basketball team, just go down the list with Lincoln women indoor and outdoor track and field, and last year seeing Washburn women volleyball finish second in the country. Women's tennis at Central Oklahoma finished runner-up. And it just speaks, I think, to not only the opportunities that are being provided on our MIAA campuses, but the high caliber of coaching and competition that's taking place. And that's what we like to tell both men and women prospective student athletes. If you want to come to a school and have a chance to win an NCAA championship, look at an MIAA institution, and I'm proud that's true in men's athletics as well as women's athletics.
MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy, thank you for the time as always. We'll catch up here in a few weeks.
You bet. Good to see you, Chris.